Good morning. Welcome everyone to Breakthrough Academy. Friday morning here. Still cold. We've got the heater on. We're rugged up. We're good. We're ready to go. We're excited for everyone that's already been commenting that you're here. We're so glad you're here. Our regulars, if you're new, if you're here and maybe you're not a regular or you don't normally comment, there's no pressure, but feel free. Let us know that you're here. We love to know who we're speaking to. And people live now, but and you joining if you're watching this again or at a later date. We are so glad that you're here. We have a lot of fun here.
It is. Good morning to Pastor Christine, to Brooke, to Judith, to Richard. Joining us from Kunamu. Where is Kunamu?
He made that name.
Do you know where Kunamu is?
No, he does this every time.
You know country.
Yeah, Victoria. Yeah, but not that part.
Kunamu.
Often I used to play football in a lot of the places, like Kanamatite and Tokemwall and things like that. We used to play, but not Kunamu.
Kunamu. Richard, where is Kunamu? Can you give us a bit of an update to where that is? Good morning, Mark. Good to see you, bro. If you don't know us, my name is Jay. I'm one of the team members here at Breakthrough. This is Josh and Senior Pastor, Pastor Peter Lewis. And Academy, it's our faith-building, Bible-teaching program here at Breakthrough.
Yeah.
Every Friday we come together with the purpose of learning not just what's in the Bible, but how to study the Bible. Pastor Peter's goal is to teach us and equip us with the skills, the knowledge, the resources, the habits that it takes to be able to break apart the Bible and find out the core of what is in it, how to put it in the context of its culture, how to put it in the context of today, how to take it and find not just what is said, but actually contextualize it, how to emphasize what the authors of the Bible were emphasizing in those moments, and how we can learn to break apart so it's not just a bunch of words, but actually see it for how it was intended to be written and how it's intended to be read, I should say.
Yeah. I love not just here in Academy, but any time when I'm going to the Word or I'm thinking about different concepts or different things that God has done for us, and I can always pinpoint it to Pastor taught us here, and the revelation through the Holy Spirit, through Pastor Peter, through him to us now. And like sometimes I think, there's a few thoughts that are my own, but like what you say, you're training us up. And I absolutely love that, because I see that, as I'm saying, whenever I go into the Word, I go, Pastor taught us this here. And I have such a revelation of this here, in repentance or whatever it might be, because of what you're doing. So we absolutely love this, Pastor.
So I really appreciate that, Josh. And it's exciting to me. In fact, one of the exciting things, this type of teaching we're doing at the moment, it's I'm teaching you 10 things that Bible says in the book of Thessalonians and stuff. No, I'm giving you a framework, and then you go away and read it. And during the week, I've heard stuff come from you both. We've had conversations. Jay was saying, I was reading this, and I was just reading through, and I was marking every indication of here. And I thought, the things that Jay is telling me, I'm like, that's really good. I hadn't actually seen it in that light myself. So to me, it's exciting. I'm not just saying, okay, here's the 5 things you need to learn. I'm giving you a framework. You're going and you're filling that frame with your own revelation, your own understanding. And so when you come back, it's not like an echo. It's, wow, I've discovered this. You've given me something to look at Thessalonians and make sense of it. But then I'm studying it to see what it says. And this has struck me, and this has hit me, and this is, I've got, given me a revelation. Those revelations are exciting, because it means that what I've done is I've sparked a beginning, and then it'll just keep going. And every time you read this, or you read another part of the book of Acts, or any of the letters, you're building upon that, and that gives me more excitement than ever, because it's your ministry doesn't go as far as my ministry. Your ministry now can go into all the areas that I couldn't go and do, and the prophetic emphasis that you will bring that I could never do, you can now build into that, and you can minister to people. So this is designed to enable these 2 guys to fulfill their ministry. It's also then going to have the overflow effect of you. Whatever God's called you to do, you take this teaching that we're doing, let it sort of work in your heart, and so then you can do what God's called you to do with a greater effectiveness.
Don't just sit back and go, it's for Jay and Josh. It's for you. Claim it, receive it, write it down. Believe it.
You say this gives me the foundation. In fact, in John chapter 8, verse 31,
while we're turning there, also, thanks to Mark and Richard, Kunamu is just past Cobram, headed towards Tokamal.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
I know Tokamal.
Yeah.
Saying on the other side of the river of Tokamal, there's not much there, just a big strawberry, according to Richard.
The big strawberry. Good on it. They love it. Good to have a good. If you want to put your country town on a map in Australia, you put something big there. The big watermelon, the big prawn, one of the places, the big sheep, the big merino sheep. I'm thinking of all the places, not just I've heard, I have visited. So we have right down the road from us, we have the big watermelon. Did you know that? It's appeared in a book and all the big
what's
things.
that one that we passed when we're going on our way to Sydney? It was like a statue. Or
there's a
something.
dog in a tucker box.
Did you say that? Sorry.
No, because that's not big.
Oh, isn't it?
But it's still a little dog on a tucker box, but famous. So this little statue of a dog on a tucker box
Has a song.
and and people stop for miles around, go and see that. Yeah, in Australia, just put a statue or something big.
You should go see this right in the middle of here.
Yeah, go see it. And you get there. And when I was a child and we do this stuff, you go see the dog in a tucker box, my dad, is that it? Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. I'm still looking around for, the big stuff, the good stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a statue of a dog sitting on a tucker box. And if you don't know what a tucker box, sometimes we have people joining from overseas. They don't know what a tucker box is. Tucker is an Australian word for food, and so it'd be your lunch box. The dog, and it was the dog was guarding the lunch box.
Yeah. Funnily enough, it was 1 year ago today where we saw the dog on the tucker box.
Well, there we go.
A year ago today, the three of us drove to Sydney for the
Did not
conference.
know.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
A year ago. Okay.
So a year ago today, we were actually at the dog on the tucker box.
Well, there you
Richard says I've got a dog on a leash.
go. Our dog wouldn't be sitting on the tucker box.
Our dog would be
In the tucker box.
enjoying the tucker box.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough of dogs on tucker boxes. John chapter 8 verse 31. Before we read that, I want you to, one of the things God shows us as a church, and Breakthrough here said this is your mission. It's not unique to us, but it's the focus that we have to do is to disciple ourselves and to disciple others, to grow as disciples, because that's the Great Commission, to go and make and create and disciple one another. And so in order to do that, we've got to know, what does a disciple do? Because just being a believer doesn't make you a disciple. That's some people are like, what? John 8:31 says, if you go to verse 30, as he spoke these things, many came to believe in him.
Verse?
John 8:30. Many, as he spoke these things, many came to believe in him. So they were believers.
Yep.
All right, they can believe in him. Yeah, he's the Messiah. He's the one. Jesus, therefore, was saying to those Jews who had believed in him, he said, if you abide in my word, then you are truly disciples of mine.
Yep.
You'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free. He said, I appreciate you believing, but if you abide in the words and the things that I speak in the word of the scriptures, if you abide in those things, that's what a disciple is. Someone who's being taught and trained and equipped. You can believe in me, but you're not a disciple unless you're doing these things. And so at Breakthrough Church, we recognize there's 5 things that as followers of Jesus, because a disciple must be a disciple of someone.
Yeah.
So we're disciples of Jesus. Jesus is the center. Take Jesus out, we're not disciples.
Yeah.
We're just aimless, people doing a series of programs and methods together. No, Jesus is the center. So we are disciples of Jesus. But we do 5 things.
We haven't talked about this in a while.
We haven't talked about this in a while, but I often
You've done
think
the
about this, and God has actually been challenged me to think about these things. So I often think about them very regularly now.
So it's the 5 things disciples love to do.
5 things disciples love to do.
I know the one that we about the casting out of demons.
Kicking out demons is the one that I can remember as well.
So,
We love Jesus. We love others.
So Jesus is not one of those, because Jesus is the center of it all.
He is the center. All right.
Okay, so
Kicking out
5 things.
demons.
5
Kicking out
things.
demons.
This will give you a clue. 8:31. If you abide in my word, then you're truly disciples.
Love the word.
You got to love the word.
Was it disciples love the
They
word?
love the word.
Disciples love each other?
They love each other.
And
So
others? Or?
and each other in the sense that discipleship is a group activity. It's a team sport.
Yeah.
Okay. Discipleship is what you do together.
Yeah.
So and you got to love and be committed to that, and not just I attend church. No, I'm in. And the Book of Hebrews says that we find ways, and we're watching for ways that we can encourage and exhort one another and grow one another. So we love the word, we love each other, and we love the world.
The world, yeah.
So we have it.
Love people of the world.
Yeah, so we love people. We love the world. We take this good news to the world. God so
Miracles?
loved the world. No, we don't. We love not ourselves.
Yeah, love not ourselves.
It's because that's one of the key things about discipleship is that it goes against the flesh.
Yeah.
And Jesus said, sometimes we say, love disciples. We have power and with authority and with the sons and all that. And good. Jesus said that's all good.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, you got to love. Not yourself. You've got to love. If you love your family more than me, it doesn't cut it. If you don't take up your cross and follow after me, you're not truly my disciple. There's a lot of things where he says, if you don't do this, you're not truly my disciple. And there are a lot of those are about the sacrifice and the cost of doing that. So we love the word. We love each other disciples.
Yep.
We love the world. We love not ourselves. We learn, and we love to kick the devil's butt, and we love to because
That's good.
There's a passion to get out and make this a kingdom working power thing. So as followers of Jesus, as disciples, you say, well, how can I be a disciple? Well, just work on those 5 things. Just fill yourself with those things. Love the word, love getting amongst other disciples, love the church, love being part of what God's doing there, love the world, find ways of ministering this to others outside. Love not yourselves. Let God be constantly pruning and dealing with the pride and the things like that. And love to kick the devil's butt. Love to be supernatural and use his authority and his power wherever you go. If you do those 5 things, guess what you'll find you are?
A disciple.
A disciple. All right. You don't say I'm going to be a disciple. What you do is I'm going to follow Jesus, and then you just work those 5 things. And I think one area is that people can be believers and not strong in any of those 5.
Yeah.
All right. You can be a believer. You can even go to church and say, well, they say I go to church, I love other people. No, you're just turning up at church. All right. That doesn't mean you love the discipleship process of being and connected and engaging and helping and meshing with others. So you can be a believer but not do those 5 things.
Yes.
And I think that's what those 5 things are. What if you just work on those 5 into your life, you'll find, hey, guess what I am? I'm just a disciple. That's what disciples do.
And that was also like a message series that you did.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Double down, was it?
Yeah, double down on discipling.
That'll be on the website.
Yeah. So we covered, and I actually only got to cover the first couple of those. And I've always sort of said those others are always just as important. So you can go back and watch that, and you can continue to build on those things. But the reason we do what we do is one of those things is we love the word.
Yeah.
The word
That's good.
is what we train. It's not the only thing. But these things help us and equip us to do the other 4. All right. Without this, we don't do the other 4.
Yep.
But it's important not just to be stuck in here and say, "Well, I'm a disciple." No, that's just part of it. So we have been doubling down on the word, looking at this Book of Acts to give us a framework. The Book of Acts, we've just been working through it, and one of the reasons we did this is because then it gives us a framework for the letters that Paul wrote, because they weren't just written out of a vacuum.
Yeah.
They were written to churches and to people that were often mentioned in other places.
Yeah.
And so by using those frames, not every church that was written to is mentioned in Acts. There's a part where like Romans is, but Paul was only just sort of turned up there at the end, but he wrote a whole letter to the Romans.
Yeah.
Colossians, Paul never visited Colossae, but he wrote a letter to them. So sometimes you've got to do multiple pieces together. But people like Timothy, he was part of Acts, and so by understanding that and where Timothy was in Ephesus, that's in Acts. All these things overflow and work together. So if you can understand the Book of Acts and use that as your framework, it enables you then to look at all the other parts of the New Testament, and those things sort of come together. They've got something to work together and
it gives
hold.
it contextualizes. I think it's the best word, because we can. That's one thing I so loved about, like, if you didn't join us last week, I really encourage you to go back and when you get a chance, drive home from work this afternoon or something, go and rewatch last week's
Not while you're driving.
Academy. Don't watch it. Maybe have a listen if you're driving. But like we were talking all about where the church of Thessalonica was at.
Yeah.
And it just puts everything in Thessalonians into context for me.
The Thessalonians.
The Thessalonians, yes. I
get it right.
Don't make it Thessalonica and Thessalonians. I'm not going to get that correct. You know
So-
that's not on me.
That's
That's
on
not
me,
my
right?
fault. That's their fault. You know, they're the ones who did that. But, you know, like when you read through his time in Thessalonica,
Yeah.
you Paul's time in Thessalonica, you understand where they were at culturally, you understand where they're at spiritually, you understand where they're at mentally, things like that, and that gives you a whole lot more, you know, understanding of where they're writing from, you know.
Before you said it last week, I don't think I ever had the thought, and maybe, you know, maybe to other people it's been obvious, but to me, I never knew that they were a new church of 6 months.
No. Listen, you're not alone there. I was like, what? I had always read 2 Thessalonians, and especially the first part. I thought, oh, Paul, I actually said Paul's old and grumpy because, you know, often when I feel the second one's been written, it's sort of later. You know, second, and sometimes you see. Two things and you just presume they're the same. Like 2 Timothy, Paul's at the end of his ministry. I've run my race.
Yeah.
So I see 2 Thessalonians. I thought, well, that must be near the end as well. I just presume. 2 Timothy's near the end. 2 Thessalonians. These are the second ones are the ones he's written near the end.
Yes.
1st and 2nd Thessalonians are two of the first letters that Paul wrote. One after the other. And I'm like, he's not old and grumpy. He's young and grumpy. But it was like, I just thought, this is interesting. At the end of his ministry, this is what he's like. No, this is right near the start. And right. So it's, even I had the wrong framework. And so I'm looking at it through a filter that didn't help me appreciate what they were being challenged with, what the challenges facing Paul and the others, and how he approached it. But once we looked at Acts chapter 17 and we immersed ourselves in that, and then you come and read Thessalonians through that, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians through that light, it all takes on a whole new meaning. And this is one of the most powerful things. When we understand something in the context of what that it was written for and the purpose to them, we understand that what it was written for, it actually makes it more relevant.
Yeah.
All right? You know, it doesn't become less relevant, it becomes more relevant. The more I understand what its original intention was, I actually began to understand, well, this has overlap with me here.
Yeah,
and therefore I can see these words are actually directed at me as opposed to just general words for all Christians everywhere. No, this is actually very particular to this situation. And I'm going to keep using this illustration because I think it was a great one that Jay did, was that he said, you know, if you're asking someone to help you come and clean out your office, if you've got two people and one's a hoarder and one's a thrower, do you know what I mean? You know, so, you know, one just says everything's a memory and everything's precious and you can't throw that out. And one of the, you know, and it's like, oh, you might one day need this. They're terrible to help you clean if you're trying to cull. But if the other person's a thrower, you've got to watch out that, you know, you don't come back.
You can't give them the same advice.
Yeah, so you've got to give them two different sets of advice to the same task.
I remember once years ago we had a working bee here at church. And my sister Caitlin, she said she was like in charge of cleaning up, looking after like resetting up a room or one of the kids' rooms. I don't even remember what it was. And she said she had two people. One was a thrower and one was a hoarder. And she said, "You explain to the thrower. No, we need to keep the." And you're like, "Stop overhearing this. I'm not telling you to keep this because you just kept an old pack of chips that's 6 months old." And it's like, "No, you can throw that." No, I'm not saying you to throw out. She said the whole time going back and forth trying to explain to the two different personalities.
Don't sit them side by side and give them the same advice because they'll all get confused.
Yeah,
and that's so much. In his instruction to the Thessalonians is not necessarily say, well, that's for all people, all church area. No, if you're in those particular situations, he's saying certain things because of sometimes their lousy attitude towards something. He's having to correct it and train it.
Yeah.
And so he emphasizes. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, actually, and it actually will come back in maybe what we're going to share today in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, when Paul was talking to them and they had a high and mighty attitude and they thought, you know, you're rich. So he emphasized his lack of resource and the fact that, I don't have money like you do. You know, I'm struggling. I'm just an apostle. With, you know, you guys are the great kings. Wish I was as good as you. But you read that and it sounds like, so therefore to be an apostle you must have nothing. You must always be totally abased. You must be, life must be terrible. No, he was very careful to emphasize to them
Yeah.
what he was they needed to hear. But when he's talking to the Philippian church, he said, you know what? But to them, see, they were super generous. Even in their poverty, they gave, and they enabled him to be blessed. So he's not going to come to them and say, okay. So to the Philippian church, who is been supporting him time and time again, he says in Thessalonians, more than once you sent money for my needs.
Yeah.
When he's down in Corinth and he's having to work as a tent maker, he said Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, and guess what?
And that's the church of Philippians?
Philippians is in Macedonia.
got
It's a
supply
key city of
for
Macedonia, and so he comes down, and all of a sudden he said he's out in the marketplace every day, and he says so the transfer, and he says to the church of Philippi, you sent me money through when I was in the Thessalonians, you more than once, and he said now here I am, and I'm so you've got this church generous, giving out of their no need, but they are sowing, and what do you say to them? Oh, as an apostle, I never have enough.
Yeah.
I never have enough as an apostle. I'm always, because I was like, what? We're giving you. We're giving to you.
What we have.
Yeah, well,
what we can.
What we can. And it's like, I don't have enough. You guys, you all got plenty, but I don't have enough. It'd be the wrong message totally for them.
Paul didn't want to dry that up.
Yeah. Well, it's like, there'd be a slap in their face. It'd be like,
it would.
It would be, and it would sound like he's trying to get more from them. Do you know what I mean? Because they're givers. So, but what he says to them is, so his message to the Philippians is, well, let's look at it because we're at Bible school, we're at Academy. There's one thing you learn if you're joining us at Academy, we take our time. So you guys see it and you understand. See, what I don't want you to do is think, I'm just telling you amazing stuff. I'm actually getting it all from the Bible. So if you just put the pieces together, you'll get the same understanding. All right, so Philippians 4 verse 10. But I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now...
Philippians 4.
Yeah, verse 10.
I want to be there so I can mark it up if I want it. Yeah. Go.
Okay, so, but I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last you've revived your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned. Also, don't get me wrong, you were concerned, but you just didn't have opportunity.
Yes.
When you say something, well, I'm glad you're finally giving to me again. Oh, I don't mean you were being stingy. I just mean you wanted to, but you just couldn't happen. So, not that I speak from want, for I've learned to be content whatever circumstances I am. So he says, I'm not trying to pump you and say, I really need stuff.
Yeah.
But I know how to get along with humble means and also know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Nevertheless, you have done well to share with me in this pressure that I've been under. And he said, you at the first preaching of the gospel, after I departed from Macedonia, no church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, but you alone. All right, they started a church at Thessalonica. He started a church at Berea, but he never talks to them about how these promises. He doesn't talk to them. Eventually, he's in Corinth, but not in Macedonia. But he goes down. He talks to them differently about finances. This church did something, and they got hold of something, and they were ministering to him. And he said, for even Thessalonica. You send a gift more than once for me. Not that I seek the gift itself, but I seek for the profit which increases to your account. But I have received everything in full, and have an abundance, and am amply supplied. So, to the Corinthian church, he's emphasizing, how tough it is when you're an apostle. To the Philippian church, he's saying, I'm doing really well. Which one's true? They're both true at different times and different stages and in different ways. You want to emphasize things. And so you're speaking to the same thing from a different perspective. But to this church, he can speak and say, you know what? You've enabled me to be blessed. And I like you said, I've learned the secret of what to do when I don't have anything and what to do when I have plenty. It's the same secret. You trust Jesus no matter what.
Yeah.
I can do all things through him.
Yeah.
And so here he is talking to them. And he said, now you've all, you've sent me another gift, and I'm really blessed. And he said, I'm amply supplied, having received from Epaphroditus what you've sent. And so he says, and you know what? I can say to you, my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. That's an amazing thing. He said, my God will supply your needs. You've ministered to me, you've blessed me. But he said, I know my God. You know, it's like a personal covenant, relationship, partnership, connection with them. My God. Compare this with 2 Corinthians.
Just the language of shall.
Yeah. My God shall supply all your needs.
Where's that?
Now you go to 2 Corinthians chapter 9. And here, he's talking now in 2 Corinthians, I think chapter 8. Now, verse 1. Now, brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God which has been given in the churches of Macedonia.
So what verse?
8:1.
8:1. Sorry, I want to know.
Yeah, I did say I sent you to 9 and then I went back. Context.
Yeah.
8:1. Now, brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God which has been given in the churches of Macedonia. Okay, so now we're talking about the Philippian church.
Yep.
And that in their great ordeal of affliction, their abundance of joy and their deep poverty overflowed in the wealth of their liberality. So that they got involved in things and they were now. So chapter 9, he's talking about an offering that has been prepared to go down to Jerusalem to help the saints there because they were going through a drought that was prophesied. So they're collecting money to go and help the church of Jerusalem because they want to honour the church from where it all came from.
Yeah.
So they say this is our way to sow back. Verse 8. Let's just skip there because this is not where we want to be necessarily teaching to today. But verse 8, 2 Corinthians 9. God is able to make all grace abound to you, that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have abundance of every good deed. So, Philippian church, his promise is, my God shall supply.
Yep.
To the Corinthian church, my God is able to.
My God can.
Able.
My God can, or my God will. All right. Why was he making two different sort of promises? Now, God is able is wonderful, but it doesn't give you any ability to. You know, that's
I'm
that's
able
a
to
possibility.
do that, but
Yeah.
it's not, will you do it?
Like when the leper came to Jesus and said, "Are you willing?" You know, I know you can, but are you willing?
Yeah.
God can heal, but God will heal.
Yeah.
Two different things, and this is where a lot of Christians are. That they live. Most Christians will believe God can.
And they'll be okay with that.
Yeah, God can. God can bless
Yeah.
you, can heal you, can prosper you, yes, he can, but to take that to a promise where it says my God will. Now, why was he able to give the promise of my God will to the Philippians, and he gave the promise my God shall or can to the Corinthians? So this is an example of, because in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 they had such a lousy attitude. Now they were actually prospering and doing well, but he had to sort of, he had to speak with them and deal with them differently.
Yeah.
The Philippian church, he deals with them differently.
Yeah.
So this is one of the keys. When you learn what the church is at, you can see what's being said to them and why it's being said to them. So 1 Thessalonians is like, okay, what's his attitude towards them? Now you notice he said more than once, you had to send finances to me when I was in Thessalonica. Now that's just down the road. And why was he needing money at Thessalonica? Why, he started a church there. Why wasn't the Thessalonian church now providing for him?
Yeah.
And how long? And that's why we know he was 3 weeks in the synagogue, and it sounds and reads as if he was 3 weeks in the synagogue and then got kicked straight out. But we understand from these verses where it says more than once while I was in Thessalonica, money came, and he said, I refused to, we had to look after ourselves in during that
Which
time.
has to be longer than 3 weeks.
It has to be longer than 3 weeks, and there's a period there. So you can sort of piece it together between 3, or as Gordon Fee believes, up to about 6 months.
Yeah.
He was there. So it's 3 weeks in the synagogue, but then there was a period just ministering to everybody outside the synagogue, and then they caused such a fuss and went down. Why was, what was there? And God, and you read in his letter to the Corinthians how their attitude towards money meant he had to act differently to them. He had to be careful with the Corinthian church. He had to be careful with the Thessalonian church. People were so suspicious, and there were so many rumors going around that he had to pull back and not take what was his right and his liberty.
As an apostle.
Yeah, as an apostle. So, Paul could have done this. He should have done it, but he said, I chose not to because of the gospel's sake. And
Where are we going here?
I'm just having a look to see where we go.
See what happens.
Yeah, I don't want to. I sort of didn't want to get into. Yeah, but I'm sort of. I don't want to make statements in Academy.
Yep.
Without backing some of them up.
Yeah, that's important.
All right. So 1 Corinthians 9, because this plays into Thessalonians.
Wait, 1 Corinthians?
1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 1. Am I not free? Am I not an apostle? Have I not seen Jesus our Lord? Are you not my work in the Lord? If to others I'm not an apostle, at least I am to you. For you are the seal of my apostleship in the Lord. My defense to those who examine me is this: do we not have a right to eat and drink? Now, okay, they're not talking about can they eat and drink, but it's like, can we not eat and drink at your expense? That's really what who's paying.
Yeah.
Do we not have the right to take along a believing wife, even as the rest of the apostles and the brothers of the Lord? You know, and Cephas, Peter, you know, he was allowed to bring his family. Or do only Barnabas and I not have the right to refrain from working? Who at any time serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat the fruit of it? Or who tends the flock and does not use the milk of the flock? I am not speaking of these things according to human judgment, because, you know, that's just, you could say, well, that's just human reasoning. He said, you know, he said, well, the law backs me up. You know, the Old Testament scriptures. Or does not the law also say these things? For it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing. God is not concerned about oxen, isn't he? So this is more than oxen. This is a principle.
Yeah.
Verse 10, is he speaking altogether for our sake? Yet for our sake it was written, because the ploughman ought to plough in hope that the thresher to thresh in hope of sharing the crops. If we sowed spiritual things in you, is it too much if we should reap material things from you? So he said it is biblical, it is normal, and it is right that if you are helping people spiritually, that they are helping you and providing them the physical things that you need. That is good, it's biblical, it's right.
Yeah.
But if others share that right over you, do we not want more? You've got to try and... Paul is always got people speaking against him, and he is not there to be able to defend. So he has to write letters, and they say, oh, he's just greedy. He's just after your money. He's just after your money. You know. Now, some ministers are after your money. So I'm not saying every minister, but not every minister that can be put under the same canopy. He said, nevertheless, we did not use this right, but we endure all things that we may cause no hindrance to the gospel of Christ. In other words, we had every right to it, but when I came to you, I did not use it. Remember?
I like the way it puts it in the ESV here. Do not. Nevertheless, we have not made use of this right, but we endure anything rather than put an obstacle in the way of the gospel of Christ. I think obstacle's a really good word there.
Yeah, we put something that would stop you receiving it. Then he goes on to give some more examples. People work in the temple. God directed those who proclaim the gospel, verse 14, to get their living from the gospel. Okay, God directed those who proclaim the gospel to get their living from the gospel. But I have used none of these things. And I'm not writing these things that it may be done. So, in other words, he's not, I'm not, he said, for it would be better for me to die than have any man make my boast an empty one. He goes on to say, hey, I could have enforced this, but I chose not to, because I would rather have you guys not give me a cent and take away every chance you have to undermine the gospel, and me have the joy of knowing I gave the gospel the best chance here.
Yeah.
I think this
now, he does not write this to the Philippian church.
Can I just say, I think this is a great example of something I've been studying. I did a bit of a study, and I want to go back and finish it off earlier this year on the verse in John about give us today about daily bread. In Matthew, daily bread, and then covers it in the similar stuff is covered in John with the abide in me sort of thing like this. But basically, I was doing a study on that concept, and it took me back to the Old Testament, to the Israelites, you know, and manna, and Deuteronomy 8, I think it is, and stuff like that. And it taught me a really valuable lesson. That's something that goes back to the first thing we ever learned in Academy. The first thing we ever learned in Academy is the Bible is two things. The Bible is God-breathed, but the Bible's also a book.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important in verses like 1 Corinthians 9, 12, where it says, nevertheless, we have not made use of any of this right, but we endure anything for the sake of the gospel.
Yeah.
You have to remember that this is not just God breathed. This is a book.
Yeah.
What am I talking about here is the fact that not everything the Bible records is the correct thing to do.
No.
Not everything the Bible records is saying that's the right way to go. You know, in reading through the Israelites with manna, God didn't want manna was not intended to be a restrictive thing.
Yeah.
The issue was that they couldn't trust in the moment. He blessed them abundantly, and they said, we better take extra.
Yeah.
And because of that, he had to go and say, you must only take what you can eat.
Yeah, his purpose was never to leave them in a manna mindset.
His purpose wasn't to leave them in a manna mindset. They were left in a manna mindset because they couldn't...
Well, sorry, I tell you that. They were never meant to be in a manna method.
Manna method. They weren't to have a manna... He had to use it to get them a manna mindset. But we read it as, well, they're the Israelites and that they're God's people, and suddenly, well, that should be what I do. Like, no. He's like, well, God did that for them, so that must be right. No, God met them where their faith was, and their faith wasn't as high as God wanted it to be, but God met them for what they could believe in. Just because God did it doesn't mean that was it was God's full purpose. And it's like, reading things like that in 1 Corinthians, it's like, oh, okay, it's like, nevertheless, we have not made use of this right, but we endure anything rather than put an obstacle in the way of the gospel of Christ. And it's like, okay, what's that obstacle? Well, we're saying the fact that money can be really weird when you try and integrate money and faith. When you try and integrate money and humility, it just gets really bad, and it can become an obstacle to people. So I'm like, okay, I'll do the same thing as Paul here. I don't want to take money, and I don't want to let money become an obstacle. And God's like, no. That's not my intention. That's what he had to do in order to meet them where they're at, which was an imperfect people. And it's like, you have to remember, when Paul's writing to an imperfect people, don't replicate some of the things that he's telling you to do. It is like,
don't listen to the instructions for a hoarder.
Exactly.
If you're a thrower.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, I don't want to say, well, their hearts weren't right, so I'm going to presume my heart won't be right, so I should do the same thing. And God's like, I'm like, no, don't read that as being like, well, if the Church of Corinth couldn't get their hearts right, what right do I have? Like, no, that's why I say, God, change me from the inside to give me the right heart so I can live the way Paul wanted them to be living.
That's right.
Instead of presuming I will do the same thing, you know?
Yeah, there's what's the famous book author, The Tale of Two Cities, is it? The Tale of...
I've heard the phrase.
Famous,
I know the name.
And I wrote an article once, when a long time ago, called A Tale of Two Cities. Philippi and Corinth. One God, my God shall, my God can. All right? And, two cities, two different promises. Why? Because of their attitude and their lifestyle regarding finances. Now, Paul had to get the Corinthian church to give, because they were all collecting money to go down to the Jerusalem, and the Corinthian church said, we'll help. And so 2 Corinthians 9 is his instruction to get them ready. He said, the last thing I want to do is turn up with a group of people ready to collect your money, and you haven't collected anything. He said, that's going to look on...
I told them that you were good
guys.
It's going to look...
Well, tell them these guys are good. And so we get instruction. So, but by getting inside these things, you suddenly understand it from what was happening, and these verses don't become confusing. They become life-changing and helpful, and they give you the principles. This is the... if you get hold of these things, so this is my job, is to get you in the way of these things, the principles of them, and then you can apply them to all sorts of different situations. That's the thing. I can't give you enough, this is what to do when you face this situation, when I send you out to minister amongst the world, because you never know what you're going to come up against. You don't know what people are going to say, you don't know how they're going to respond, you don't know what... you're going to be... I say this is how we do it, but a lot of what we are talking about is done under the Australian law, where you are free to share the gospel. But what happens if you now go to another country where you're in a Muslim or a communist or a Buddhist sort of restricted area or something? We go to somewhere where, when I went to Nepal, missionaries there had just been thrown out of the country for proselytizing and trying to convert them. And so that's a very real situation to, okay, how do they minister? We can stand up here and freely share, but over there, there's got to be awareness of what restrictions. Now, you say, well, that means you don't share the gospel because the government says don't share the gospel. No, but unless you understand the principles, you'll be lost. You'll be dealing with a family that are dealing with an alcoholic father, and you'll be lost because, all my ministry's been done to nice, clean people that are sorted. No, I've got to learn the principles how to deal with that situation and how. So if I give you the principles about how to get the word and that, you can then apply that to all these situations. If I just tell you everything I know, you're going to be in trouble because you will just hit the limits of my circumstances, my experience with these principles. Now, I'm telling you this because you guys are about a really good age to sort of work with the examples of the Bible. We know that when Paul came to the book of Acts and they were doing the second missionary journey, last week and the week before is where you get all this information and you do the Bible maps. I can't afford to do retelling because then we just, we've got to keep going. We've got to keep moving. So we're going back to the book of Acts. This is because we're studying Thessalonians, if you believe it or not. What I've been sharing has actually been about the book of Thessalonians, even though we've never been talking about Thessalonians, all right? Because it's the principles that are coming through. But you do this because Acts 17, we go to, this is where we get the Paul and Silas in Thessalonica, or Thessalonia.
Thank you.
When they had travelled through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. Now, who is they? We're learning. I have started to do this in my Bible. I got you to do it. I got you to do it because it's so helpful to me. And I thought, this is helping me, you need to do it. In the margin of my Bible, I have written in the coloured pencil all the dates and the times and the places. So we know when and where, because these things helped me to put. And so I have been today going back page after page saying, okay, when we wrote this, what year?
So this one was AD 49, I believe we have?
Yeah. So I want us to go back to Acts chapter. So I'm not sure how far we went. Acts chapter 7. No, Acts chapter 8. Chapter 7. Both. I'm trying to work out why, because it's in both. Acts 7, 58. It says, when they had driven out the city, this is with Steve, regarding the stoning of Stephen, they began stoning him, and the witnesses laid aside their robes at the feet of a young man named Saul.
Yep.
All right, Saul, who also we know had the name, the Roman name Paul, and he was described as a young man. Now, they can, because of the dating of the birth of Jesus, it's sort of easy to do the birth of Jesus date and everything because Jesus technically should have been born at 0 and then died about 33. But what they discovered, he was born, I think, like 2 or 3 BC. They got the dates a little bit wrong. So they moved. Jesus was born before the birth of Christ, all right? And so when he died, it was about AD 30 instead of what it should have been. He died at 33 at AD 30, so that type of age. So the book of Acts is starting at AD 30. All right? Now, this helps me.
I'm going to put that in. Even though I probably would know, but do you have a blue pencil?
Yeah.
Because I've only got the blue marker. Thank you.
This is why I carry a pencil case with my Bible. Now, so this is all happening. Chapter 9, verse 1, talks about Saul's story of conversion is AD 33.
Where do we get that number from?
Well, you should be able to get it from your Bible. There's a table in there.
Oh, wow. Oh, yes. Yeah, sequence of events in Paul's life after his conversion. I'm not sure why. I just got this because it's the study Bible.
And it's study Bible. You and me, we discovered we got the same study Bible. Yours is 30 years later, but it's the same tables. And so you can get this from the ESV, but you can also get this from other things. But I recommend you go to the ESV, English Standard Version, table of sequence of events in Paul's life, or sequence.
And so that was about 80
time frame for the New Testament.
Yeah.
Those the time frames there, they're good. Do you know what I mean? Are they perfect? No, of course they're not perfect, because that's
They're dealing with,
you're dealing with dates and times, and they're doing. But I'm comfortable with them. All right. So they give me something to latch on.
I've broken the pencil. Just doing some maintenance over here.
Yeah.
Ignore me.
What does it work with kids and animals?
And Jay.
All right. So, in chapter 9, verse 1, we're at 33 AD. So that's the state that we're at. Now, around that time, Paul is referred to as a young man. So the thing I wanted to do was that, well, what is a young man from Luke's perspective?
Yeah.
What does Luke call a young man from a Hebrew person, from their mindset? And for that, I looked up the IVP Bible background. That's a commentary written to help missionaries effectively. That now helps everyone, because when you're out in the mission field, it was like, how do I find out the stuff that isn't in the Bible?
Pencil's busted.
Or you just go as far as you can. Or
Every time I do it, breaks off again.
okay, just grab another pencil.
What else do we have?
Hey, we got another blue. Oh, good.
Oh,
I'm not going to sharpen this one.
Okay, just a real light touch. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Was that 80?
AD 33. Paul is converted at 33. So we know that at 33 he's a young man.
And that's the same time as what's his name is Stephen.
Yeah. So chapter 7, verse 58, it says they laid at the feet of a young man, and then at chapter 8, verse 1, Saul was in hearty agreement with putting him to death, and on that day a great persecution started. Then he went out. So, what does young man mean? IVB Bible background says this term is not a very precise term. It can cover a broad range of ages. So the ages it gives is that he was anywhere between 14 and 40.
Oh, okay.
All right. So
I need to know I'm still a young man.
So we're going to guess he's not 14.
Yeah.
All right. He's he's not a young teenager.
Yeah.
He's a young man, but he's old enough to get letters and go and lead a persecution. So they guess maybe in the 20s. I'm going to say one way to do this is to guess that he's 33. Now, why would I pick the age 33?
Because AD 30.
It's AD 33.
I put AD 30. Whoops.
No, he's AD 33.
No, I put 30 in my Bible.
No, 33. So just after the death of Jesus. All right. Jesus hasn't died too much earlier. So why would I pick 33? Because then it means every year that it shows what year it was happening also tells me the age of Paul. If I say I was a young man at 33, it means every time I look at what year something happened, I know the age of Paul.
You go back from
So you can sort of do that. So every time you say, "Oh, that happened in AD 49," Paul's about 49. All right.
But what it does tell you is his ministry been going on for 16 years, sort of thing.
Yeah. So you can sort of get and how old was he when he went to prison? How old was he when this happened? How old in the fisherman? And you can sort of so I can say I was about 52. So it might have been 48. He might have been 49. But around that age is all right. So what I'm saying is I'm just giving you that because every time we look at a year now, you can say, well, Paul was about that age.
Yeah.
And we do know we've got some timelines then. That, for instance, I told you last couple of weeks ago when the books of the Bible were written, and for instance, if you want to look at Philemon, and so you go right to the end and say, where was Philemon written?
It says.
Is that really a book in the Bible?
In AD 50, he writes 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians.
So it's about 50 when he did.
Oh,
so go to Acts 28.
Wait, where's
Acts 28, verse 17. I had written in the margin there that Paul writes in AD 62.
Where? AD Acts 27?
Yeah. 28.
Okay, Acts 27 I have where Hebrews written.
Yep, Acts 28.
Yep.
AD 62.
62, yeah.
And just to give me a bit of cultural understanding of this, what was the expected life at that time?
Well, let's get a bit of a clue from Paul. Like his life is a bit hard to tell because he was like getting thrown in and out of prison.
He was doing a few extra things.
and threatened with execution. So it's a little bit hard to sort of work on what is his expected life. But around AD 62, the last chapter of the book of Acts, Paul is writing Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, and Philemon.
AD 62.
Yeah, and yep.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah, so you should have that written somewhere already.
we did that.
Jay?
I do.
Okay, so the reason I mention that is in the book of Philemon, we get some clues.
Titus, Philemon.
Philemon should.
Hey, first try as well.
Philemon should be right after the book of Colossians. Like they were partner letters, but they're split up because it was shorter.
Yeah. Philemon was part of what letter?
Colossians. He wrote Philemon to Colossians at the same time.
Really?
It's literally just a page.
Yeah, it's a personal letter. When we get to Acts 28, we'll look at it. All right, but I just want you to look here.
Shows you how much I've read it when I said, "Oh, it's just a page."
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find. I think the first about verse 6.
What was which was the one? Sorry, did I send you that Bible, that meme on Instagram last night where it's like, I'm trying to remember which one. It's like, oh, you're a Christian. Quote me a verse from Habakkuk. Quote me something from Obadiah.
Hezekiah.
Okay, verse 9, Philemon's 9. Yet for the love's sake I rather appeal to you, since I am such a person as Paul, the aged. It says in the
I'm an old man.
Old man.
Old man.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying there's a little clue there. Now, don't take too much about. Okay, remember, when he says things like that, he's got a reason for it. All right, it's like
He says things intentionally.
Yeah, if I'm pressing, oh, look how old I am.
Yeah.
It's not because they might not write to someone and say, I feel young and vibrant. I'm just a young 62. Oh, I'm 62. All right, there's a reason he is pressing his seniority and his. You don't want to weary an old man, do you? Don't leave me. So it's the word elder, which is where we get our leadership from. You can be a young elder in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right? Timothy was a young elder. Okay, because elder was not just a name for age, but it was also
seniority.
Seniority. So he's saying, I'm an elder. So some people. So if you look at that translation, you can look at it in other versions, and some will say, well, is he talking about his age or his rulership position? So New English translation.
An old man.
An old man.
The age
old
you have.
Man. Elderly man. Old man. Aged. New Living Translation. Old man.
Yeah, the Message calls him Christ's ambassador.
Okay. Christ's ambassador.
So that's using
It's using the eldership in rulership as opposed to simply age. So he could. It could be both, but it's more likely age. Anyway, I'm mentioning that because at AD 62, he's calling himself
an old man.
An old man.
An old man.
All right. So if we said age and date are about the same, it matches.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just saying that's one of the ways. There's a little peg in here. Which means
clue,
that, we're getting a clue.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't say in Acts that that's when it was written, but they've worked that out, and they might have. It might be circular. They might say must have written it there because in Philemon he says he's an old man, so we'll put it here.
Yeah.
So it could be circular reasoning, but that's all right. It matches and it gives it reason why it's there. I'm mentioning all this because in Acts chapter 16.
Oh, almost.
They've headed off on what we call the second missionary journey. Can't take John Mark with them and Barnabas because of the fight. He's taken Silas. How old is Silas? We don't know, but I'm guessing Paul's age-ish.
Yeah.
Silas, but sort of a senior sort of representative. As they go through chapter 16, verse 1, but I'll pull this up here for... through Derbe and to Lystra, behold, a certain disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. And so, now it doesn't say he's a young man there, but when Paul writes to him in First Timothy, he says, don't let them look down on your youth.
Yeah.
Okay, so he picks up a young guy. I'm calling him a young guy, even though it doesn't mention young here, but it talks about his mother and his grandmother. It talks about the fact that we got him circumcised, so it would be acceptable. Then you look at the letter to him in First Timothy. Chapter 4, verse 12. We have this clue about Timothy. That no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, and faith. So he was a leader.
Where's that?
4:12.
4:12.
He was a leader. But Paul said, don't let them ignore you because you're young.
Yeah.
Don't let them use your age as a reason to ignore you. So now our job is to say, okay, if he's been talked about as being young, as a leader here and a pastor, how old is he when this was written? What stage? So we can go to the book of Acts, and you just got to find, when did Paul write First Timothy? Because it'll be in your margin some point. So that's why I do it in colour. So I can say, okay, I wrote this, here,
I have them all at the end.
Yeah, a lot of them.
No, I wrote them all out at the end. First Timothy?
Yeah.
AD 62 to 64. So
right at
a couple
the end.
years after he wrote
I made
Philemon.
a mistake. I'm not even in Acts. I made the mistake of writing it somewhere in the middle, just where I had space in my Bible.
Yeah, I was like at the page space open up at the end.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, no, I
It
did,
is
I,
at the
I,
end.
no, I did do it then. Never mind. I thought I
Okay,
did
you
it.
can see AD 62 to 64. He's writing First Timothy.
Yeah.
All right. So
First Timothy. Yeah.
we know Paul's about 62 at this stage.
Yep.
When he picked up Timothy in chapter 16, verse 1, AD 49. So Paul is 49.
49.
13 years later,
13 years.
he writes to Timothy,
Calling him a young
man. So 13 years after Timothy joins Paul, he's still referring to him
as a young man.
as a young man. All right?
Okay.
So he must have been really young
Yeah.
when Paul picked him up.
But also in that 14 to 40 range, that also,
Yeah.
like, if you picked him up at 20,
Yeah.
25, that
But
still...
they're using his youthfulness as a reason not to pay attention to him.
Whereas
So-
Paul was a young man and
Yeah.
was also considered, yeah.
So he's sort of saying, okay, if you're 40, you're sort of you call you a young man, but I'm not really that young.
Yeah.
So you must be young enough.
20, maybe
That-
20s?
Well,
late 20s.
it's 13 years after he starts with Paul, and he's already starting doing some stuff with Paul. He's already got a reputation, and he's being picked up. So he can't be too young, but he can't be too old,
Yeah.
because he'd be sort of 13 years later push.
About 28.
So let's say he starts at 20, and he's 33, which is so. Josh, you're
34.
34. So let's say he's Josh's age,
Yeah,
but when he started, he'd be
about my age.
about
yeah.
your age. That's
Yeah.
why I said I got the perfect example this morning. I picked these two guys because you're the age that Timothy
Still
started,
young.
and you're the age where you still, if you're pastoring a very troubled and
Prominent church.
you're young. You're young for that
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah.
And I say, Josh, don't let them look down on your youthfulness. That would still apply to you, even though you're young. You're still young for that role. But I want you to start to see Timothy. Okay, why are we looking at Timothy? Because in the Thessalonians, Paul was concerned about how the health of this little minor church was going. It had just started under intense persecution, and he has to flee with the others. And then he says in Thessalonians, let's read it. We read this last week, 1 Thessalonians chapter 3.
So we're moving to 1 Thessalonians.
Yeah, 1 Thessalonians. We've been speaking about 1 Thessalonians the whole time. All right, all these things we've been saying because he wrote this letter within a year of starting his first missionary journey. Second missionary journey. Thank you. So they picked up Timothy, headed to Troas because they couldn't find out. Trying to find out where to go to Philippi, not there very long because their ministry gets cut short because he gets thrown into prison and kicked out. They go to Thessalonians, at the most 6 months, maybe only 3 or 4 months, he's there, get kicked out again because of the persecution, go down to Berea, they're not there that long because the Thessalonians come down and stir up trouble. So he goes to Athens, so he's down in Athens, thinking and stewing about how much he wants to help the Thessalonians.
Yeah.
He said, I want to get back, but Satan's stopping me because of that persecution. And so he said, so while we're down there, verse 1, when we could endure it no longer, we thought it best to be left at Athens alone.
What chapter, sorry?
Chapter
3, verse 1. When we couldn't endure it no longer, we thought it best to be left at Athens alone. This is how I know that Paul, there was not the danger to himself that was preventing him, because it says that, we read in chapter 2 last week, Satan thwarted us, Satan stopped us, Satan blocked us. If that was the danger to our physical lives...
We know from Acts 20, is it? I was going to say, was it... You go.
No, well, I'm saying he wouldn't have sent Timothy.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, I'm scared. Well, send Timothy.
Yeah.
No,
That's like when Batman sends Robin into the room first, you know? You ever wonder why Batman in all dark colours decided to dress Robin in bright yellow and red?
I
think his other nickname is the Decoy.
Batman disguised his costume to be the shadows, and he picks Robin, green, red.
Go in there, buddy. Run that one.
There's two of us. I see one brightly coloured decoy. All right. So otherwise, Timothy is that can't be the case.
Yeah.
So it's because Paul's personal thing is so much opposition to him, it would just cause such a mess. He can't afford to go there because Satan has caused so much turmoil. But we can send Timothy. But do you see what happened? How old did I say Silas was? Possibly the same age as Paul. How old is Paul at AD 49? So
about 49.
Yeah. So about 49. So we're now about 49 still. AD 49. So Paul and Silas, 50-year-olds. Silas, if you don't remember, where he came from was when they sent down a delegation. They went down to Jerusalem to get a ruling upon what to happen with the Gentiles. They sent the letter back to the church at Antioch with some with some prophets who would take it and say, this has come from the church of Jerusalem. And then they ministered and they prophesied and they spoke. And one of those was Silas. So one of the delegation to go back with that letter was Silas. He ministered the Antioch. Then Barnabas and John Mark have a falling out. And so Paul says, Silas. So Silas is either still up in Antioch or he's gone back to Jerusalem, and Paul sends for him and says, he was a good guy. Why don't travel with him? So I'm assuming he's a statesman. He's a man of maybe Paul's age. And it talks about Silas and Saul. Initially it was Silas. It talked about Barnabas and Saul, but now it's Paul and Silas. All right, they go. But Silas is a decent guy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess he's about the same age as Paul.
Paul thinks well enough of him to...
So the three of them... All right, so I'm gonna be the Paul and Barnabas. I'm a little bit old for this role play, but people will be shocked at that. So okay, I'm about 50. So I've got the ministry experience. I'm the one who's been, I spent my decade after I got Paul. I get ministered to, road to Damascus. I head off to the back blocks of Arabia. I go into the Word. I start my ministry. I develop it all. I build it. I come back. I go to meet the church of Jerusalem. So I'm 3 years there, then Jerusalem, and then from Jerusalem I go off and I go back to Tarsus and I spend years there until Barnabas comes and brings me, and then I work with Barnabas. We develop the ministry. I do Galatians. I write the Galatians. I do this thing. I've gone through a lot already. I've seasoned the Word of God. The writing to the Galatians shows a lot of depth of his understanding of the law and how to minister this.
I feel like we discuss this all the time, but it just always amazes me. And we discussed this last year in life groups in First Come. But it's like thinking that it's like, okay, Paul went and he dived into the Word. Paul dived into the Bible.
Yeah.
But it's like realizing he didn't dive into the Bible, he dived into the Old Testament, because that's what they had. And it's like pretty amazing that someone like Paul can have such a ministry of grace. If you were to tell me you get you have to dive into the Bible to learn about grace, but you're not given any of the New Testament. You have to do it all from the Old Testament.
Yeah.
It's like, but that just shows like, again, the Bible's a book. The Bible is God breathed.
Yeah.
When you can get both aspects in part,
He looks in the Old Covenant and he sees God's grace working.
and he sees
through
God.
him.
And it's like, and I think that's just so amazing. It's like, no wonder. It's like, oh, why did Paul sort of beat around the bush a bit when he was explaining? He's like, because he didn't have. When Paul was writing to the Romans, he didn't have Romans to back him up. He had. He didn't have.
Why did he just quote from Galatians and Romans?
It's like he didn't have this book. He was writing it at the time. Like
Yeah,
he
Paul
didn't
has
have
a lot
anything-
better verses in Philippians.
Yeah, well, that's because he was doing it for the second time. But it was like, you know, it's like, but it just amazes me to think like he learnt all that, and figured all that out without having the New Testament as his backing.
All right, so me and Silas. No, you're not Silas. You're the older Timothy. Me and Silas, my age, are talking, and we're saying, you know what? I really think we should get back to Thessalonians. We're really concerned how they're handling under this pressure. What are they going through? You know, and we hardly got. You know, we were 101. You know, like I'm doing an alpha at the moment. Alpha is 11 weeks. So effectively, they would have possibly just got to the end of their alpha, and they're leading the church.
Yeah.
They're taking. We've just given them, and this was not just. Oh, we had a calm, steady plan. Some of the people that are leading the church might have only been saved a month before they left, and also under intense persecution. They had been beaten up, maybe had their stuff stolen, family members killed, things like that. Who knows?
What's the church that was in Africa or something? It was Pastor Bruce Hills went there or something. They said it was like a if you got saved in week one.
Oh no! That was the Philippian church. This guy they went there as a mission journey, and they got no support from the local churches because a few things happened. So they said, okay, we're just running the evangelist, and by week 3 they'd run out of. They didn't have enough people there to disciple the people that were getting saved. So anyone who got saved in week 1 was now discipling those people in week 3.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got 2 more weeks of Bible, teach them what you've got.
Yeah. And so they would tell them, I think, to read the book of Mark. I think it was the book of Mark they gave them as well. I don't. Anyway, so get saved, all right? Read. And all they said, just be further in the book of Mark than the person you're just have read further than what they. Now, so I'm like, this is like the intensity of what they're going through.
Hit the ground running. Yeah.
And me and Silas say, who will we send? The guy who we've picked up, who is 20 years of age?
Well, let's look here. They pick him up in
Chapter 16.
AD 49. AD 49, they go to Thessalonica. They've sent him when they write 1 Thessalonians in AD 50 while they're in Corinth.
So they've already sent him and received the word back.
Yeah, so probably they've sent him that same year that they picked him up. So he's probably been with them 8 months?
Yep.
Something like that? 6 to 8.
I was trying to work out how long, if this is the way my brain works, how long does it take you to get over a circumcision?
Yeah. He's... yeah.
As an adult?
Yeah.
Now, probably 8 months, probably over it. What is it? But the first part of his missionary journey could be like uncomfortable.
Just looking here, like, 8049, they go through, try and find someone to work. It doesn't, they can't find anywhere. Yeah. They go to Thessalonica, then they go to Berea.
Yeah.
Then they go to Athens. And then once they leave for Corinth, which is about a year later.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, even thinking through that, like, that's a lot of things that have happened with, like, Thessalonica. There's a good chance that would have only been, like, it's like, oh, I just think 6 months. But, like, that means in the other 6 months they had to have started the missionary journey, picked up Paul, tried to find where to go. Like, so just thinking the maths of it, there's probably a chance they were only there for 4 months or something like that.
Let's say
so like, you've gone to a church that it's only been about 4 months in. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say at the start of this year, I'm going to do a mission trip.
Yeah.
So I pick you, Jay.
Yep. Can't figure out where to go.
Come on, follow us.
Yeah.
You think this is great. I am going to be able to sit at the feet of
and study
this
Paul.
person and study him. Almost like I'm going to sit and do academy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be learning from you. And it's like, this is great. You tell me AD 49, I can write down AD 49. I can listen to this. This is so good. Mm-hmm. And we get to this stage,
Probably,
saying,
maybe like September or
well,
so.
no, I'm just saying, it could be now.
Yeah.
Because he had to send Timothy and Timothy come back before
Yeah.
he could write this letter. So I'm just saying.
He might have sent Timothy while they were still in Athens.
He
or so.
did.
Yeah, so I guess it was in Athens. They sent him, yeah. So.
Okay, so who do we send to this church that's under intense persecution, is only a few months old itself? The age of Thessalonica is not much older than how much Timothy's been with Paul.
No, it's not much younger.
Yeah, like no, there's the time that he spent at Thessalonica is almost the same.
Yeah, Timothy joined just before Thessalonica.
He joined just before,
the
and he's been sent just after. So it's not much longer than the church has existed.
Yeah.
And Paul says, I really want to minister to them. I want to find out how they're doing. And let's see what he says. Verse 2. And we sent Timothy, our brother, God's fellow worker in the gospel of Christ, to strengthen and encourage you as to your faith.
I got to establish and to exhort you.
Yeah. Establish and exhort you to get. I'm picking you, Timothy. Picking you to go back because I can't go back because of the persecution that's happening. It'll cause, but you can go back under the radar. You are to go back, see how they're going. We don't know whether you're going back to find the whole thing's fallen apart and you've got to try and resurrect it. We don't know whether they're infighting. We don't know what they're doing. What I do know is I can't give you any money. I'll give you money, but you can't get any money from them because they've got a real attitude towards that. So you've got to go back and sort them and encourage them, strengthen them, get them fired up, get them established, and then come back and tell us how you go. Off you go, Timothy.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Wow.
Not Silas. If Silas was sent, I can understand it. But he sent Timothy. Timothy, you're the one we're sending. We're picking you. How much trust did he put in to Timothy? And we say, oh, I'm not so sure. Is he ready? Is he ready? Let's pick a country where, let's say, it's a church where there is persecution, maybe, and Iran's under real mess at the moment. Guess what?
You're heading over there.
You've got to go over there and see how the church is going. How are they handling what's happening in Tehran at the moment? Wow! No, don't you need someone seasoned? And you're going.
Yeah.
Okay. He said, he's our brother. He's one of us, and he's God's fellow worker. He's I think sometimes because we have it fairly easy here, we extend out how much training and preparation we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we see ourselves as we need training and then more training and then a bit more training and a bit more preparation. Because, maybe I'll do another course or another Bible study, another set.
Yeah.
And he's like, God's like, 20, 22, that's, off you go. By the time he'd reached your age, Josh, let's just read it.
In First Timothy.
First Timothy. We're not studying this, I declare. Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus, according to the commandment of God our Saviour. So it's about 12 years later. And of Christ Jesus our hope. To Timothy, my true child in the faith. Grace, mercy, peace from God the Father and Christ Jesus our Lord. As I urged you upon my departure from Macedonia, remain on at Ephesus. So this is in this is third missionary journey type time. This is not the second. He says he had been in Ephesus. He'd started something, great ministry. He said, but I had to leave. God, I'm going over to the church. I'm going to see Philippi. I want to see the church of Thessalonians. I want to see how the people of Berea are going. I want to head over that area. Timothy, you're here now to do this. What does he say? I urge you upon my departure from Macedonia, remain on at Ephesus in order that you may instruct certain men not to treat strange doctrines. Okay, you've got to train these up. You've got to these problems. I sort of feel like, Paul, you've been here a while. Why haven't you told them?
Yeah.
But it's because this is an ongoing, not an easily solved problem. Otherwise, Paul would have just
In
dealt with it.
Ephesians.
Yeah. In Ephesus, he would have dealt with them, but he's saying this is a problem. You're going to deal with it. Don't let them look down on you just because you're young. Don't let them.
Yeah.
And then you read this in that light of a young man. Why did?
Because when you read that, it's like, okay, to someone my age, he's telling them go back to he told him to go where's First Thessalonians? Where's Thessalonians? Before, it's after Philippians, isn't it? Oh, sorry, after
First Thessalonians.
That's
Yeah,
not-
after Colossians.
Yeah, but it's after Philippians. Yeah.
Yeah, Philippians, Colossians, First Thessalonians.
Okay, in chapter.
Do you want to know
3,
something? First Thessalonians, Timothy, and Titus are all in alphabetical order. The 3 T's are in alphabetical order. If you get to the Thessalonians, Timothy,
Titus.
Titus,
Ah.
they're in alphabetical
Wow.
order.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I say that because that has helped me
Find them.
find them in times past.
It says here, chapter 3, we sent Timothy, our brother, God's co-worker, into the gospel of Christ to establish and exhort you in your faith. Or what does it say in your
What are we reading? First Timothy.
First Thessalonians 3? Sorry, First Thessalonians 3.
Yeah.
And then in First Timothy 1,
Yeah.
it's saying here, where are we trying to get to
Yeah.
it? The wording. May charge certain persons not to
What
teach
verse?
in First
Timothy.
First Timothy 1:3.
Oh yeah.
As I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting there when you look at the different ages and stuff. It's like, when he was very new, 21, let's say,
Yeah.
he's been sent to the church in Thessalonica
Yeah.
to encourage and exhort, establish and exhort, to strengthen and encourage. I think it has in your Bible, was it? What was the words you had, Dad?
What's that?
You had strengthen and encourage in
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Thessalonica, First Thessalonians.
Yeah, something like that.
3. And it's like, but then when he's been sent to Ephesus, he's been sent to correct.
Yeah.
It's like that you may charge certain persons not he's been sent to go and correct them, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
if you told me,
Yeah.
to go and encourage give a message at church and encourage, it's like, okay, yep, I'm young, but I can do that.
I can
I've,
yeah, but
I've done that. I've done that in in next gen,
Yeah.
we've got up and done this. Like now he's telling him, go correct them. You're saying, actually, I want you to go to a bunch of people probably a lot older than you, possibly a lot more experienced, maybe not more experienced because when they were established, but with a lot more life skills, a lot more life knowledge, a lot more life experience than you.
Yep.
And I want you to go and I want you to correct them in what they're doing. And I'd be like, heck no, I'm not going. I'm not getting sent there to do that. Like that. Like,
You do that.
First of all, it's like,
Give me a letter to give to them.
yeah, give me a letter. Like, I'll go and I'll back up what you say, but don't go and try and get me to be the one fixing them.
Okay, this is it's one thing to say,
Encourage them.
Timothy, can you share a message of encouragement with the people tonight, as opposed to you to go back into that church. And when I say strengthen and encourage, that's not like preacher, you're doing well. That's like get the church strong.
Yeah, exactly.
That's to make the church strong and encourage them to keep going in the face of persecution.
Yeah.
This is to deal with them and the sort of things I preach and the sort of things I do. You need to go back and keep them on track. And if they've got off track, bring them back on track. Now, Corinthian church, they went down there, they spent 18 months there, it says, and Paul goes on, does other things. As soon as he leaves places, things start to happen. You get in Thessalonians, they're saying, Paul is just after your money, or there's people there, they say, your job is to feed me. I don't now that we're all brothers, your job is to look after me. I don't have to do anything. So this is different to what Paul is talking about in terms of, if you don't muzzle the ox. This is just people who are just not wanting to work. They think, this Christianity is really nice. It's all about love and care and there was a poor person, so we gave them some money. Oh, what happens if I stop working? Will the church give me money? And so the church can, you love me, so you have to. God commands you to love me, so you got to care for me. So Paul's like, what a bunch of idiots. No. That's what he said. That's why I didn't even take money from you. So why should you be taking money from yourselves when you're not even preaching the gospel? So he's dealing with these issues. He's got Corinthian church, the same thing. He wouldn't take an offering from them. Remember we read that he said, I could have, but I should have, but I didn't. Because you guys are giving me so much grief and there's so much pressure. I've left and now everybody's in all factions and there's a problem. We're not going to go into it. There's lots of things happening in Corinth. Now remember he said, I'm so concerned. You guys got idiots. What did he say in 1 Corinthians? I told you we were talking Thessalonians. You probably didn't believe me.
1 Corinthians 9?
4. Verse 14. So he's like, you're telling you all these things. Now we covered this a few weeks back. All right, so this is good preparation. You just go back and read things. It says, I did not write these things to shame you, but to admonish you as my beloved children. This is about your attitude toward finances and all the rest. For if you were to have countless tutors in Christ, yet you would not have many fathers, for in Christ Jesus I became your father through the gospel. I hold a special place. I was the one there at the start, getting you in. And he said, now you've got other people coming in, telling you this, and don't believe Paul because he's just no, trust. I exhort you, therefore, to be imitators of me. Follow on. For this reason, verse 17, I have 1 Corinthians 4:17. For this reason I have sent to you Timothy, who is my beloved and faithful child in the Lord. And he will remind you of my ways which are in Christ, just as I teach everyone in Christ.
I think can I just point something out really quickly? I find it really interesting. I think, again, just thinking of yourself, imagine, if you were Paul writing these letters, a couple of things to think of is have you ever seen it when a preacher's preaching at a church or something? Yeah. And you're like, I don't think you're preaching to this church right now. I think you might be preaching to what you've come from,
I've done that. I've preached myself at you when I'm actually the person who spoke to me or the situation I'm aware of.
I'm not even saying it's a wrong thing necessarily. Sometimes I'm saying sometimes it's hey, this is what I'm going through. It's okay, if someone comes to me and asks for advice on something, a lot of the time I'll bring up stuff that happened with my ankle because it's pretty fresh in my mind and it was a pretty big event and there was things I had to deal with, and there's a lot of correlation to other things people have to deal with that I'm not in any way saying what I'm going through is better or worse. A lot of times it's not nearly as bad, but it was something I've experienced and as I'm going to speak from it and stuff like that. You look from what I've got marked up in my Bible, they're in Corinth when he's writing 1 Thessalonians. So I wonder how much of the 1 Thessalonians teaching about stuff is coming from the fact that he's now currently dealing with the churches too. He's like, I'm writing to a church that's doing it while I'm dealing with the church that's doing the same thing. And he's like, the church he's writing to, he's in the midst of dealing with the Corinth church doing this, and now he's getting reports of is that trying to deal with Thessalonians? So it's you think how much would be I'm hearing about what you guys are doing. I'm also dealing with it from they're barking up my ear at the moment about it behind me, and I'm trying to teach you guys about it, but I'm dealing with it at that moment. So it's half of Thessalonians probably could have been written to Corinthians because he was in the midst of it at the same time. And there's a lot of overlap in how those two churches are handling things like finance. So there's probably a reason he's overlapping in a lot of those teachings. Yeah,
you said look at when he was writing to the Galatians. It was they'd just gone through it in Antioch.
Exactly.
So it's you've sort of these things have overlap. So Paul's go-to when Corinthian church is in a mess is he leans Timothy, somewhere between 22 and is now sending him off to Corinth. Now he writes his letter. This is the 1 Corinthians is the third of the series of letters to Corinth. He writes a letter to them. They respond back. He's responding to that letter. So effectively, it's you don't get that sort of. You got to sort of read. You got to imagine things, and that's not. I'm trusting Gordon Fee when I say that because he stated this pretty well. But let's just read 1 Corinthians 16. Verse 10.
First Corinthians?
1 Corinthians 16, verse 10. Now, just listen to what he has to write to them. Now, if Timothy comes to you, see that he's with you without cause to be afraid, for he is doing the Lord's work as I also am.
It says, New Living, don't intimidate him.
Verse 11, let no one therefore despise him, but send him on his way in peace, so he may come to me, for I expect him with the brethren. In other words, don't give Timothy a hard time.
Yes.
Come on.
Guys, Timothy, I'm expecting Timothy's going to do a visit. This is not the visit in chapter 4. This is not the visit with the letter. This is another visit. Timothy's his fix-it man. He sends him. Now, did you see what was in 1 Corinthians 4? He said, I needed to send someone that would have my heartbeat and my attitude towards this, because it's not just about doctrine, it's about your attitude towards finances, it's your attitude towards life, it's your attitude. And he said, I have to send someone who carries, he said, be imitators of me to the Corinthians. He doesn't say imitate Jesus. He said,
4?
1 Corinthians 4. If you want to see what Jesus is like, he said, imitate me. And he said, so I'm sending someone that you can also know is my son and has my way. So you can, if Timothy likes it, it's good. If Timothy doesn't like it, it's bad.
Yeah.
Just trust his sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And then, we haven't got time to go all the issues that he had to face with this letter. But they were serious issues of kicking a guy out of the church because he was, I think, sleeping with his father's new stepmother. That's his father's new wife. And
That's Timothy is dealing with that.
No, that's the whoever took this letter. This is the letter.
Yeah.
But Timothy's already been there.
To where?
To Corinth.
Yeah,
and then he's coming sometime.
No, not Timothy's doing those things. That's Timothy's being sent to deal with those things that a church that's going through those things.
They're the
22-year-old, 23, 24-year-old Timothy's being sent to deal with all that.
Yeah, this is not a happy. Listen, this church will treat you well. This is a church I've got to write to them and say, please, when he comes, just be nice to him.
Yeah.
Go easy. So why do you have to write that to him? Do you know what I mean? Why do you have to write that to a church? I'm sending here. Don't.
Because they're not.
Yeah, well, because the last experience, they might have. When he came back, he said, "Paul,
I ain't doing that again.
I ain't going back there.
They are rough people down there. They give me a hard time when I'm preaching the gospel." And Paul's like, "Yeah, I think you should go back." But I'm just saying, to the Thessalonians in a tough situation, the Corinthians in a tough situation, back to the Corinthians, left at Ephesus, and to fix and complete that. And he said, by all that's happened, and he's going, and you don't let them look down on your youth. He's still not considered outside of youth. And I'm saying, you guys have got to look at this as not comfy teaching and training, but I'm equipped. All right, you're not just getting the word; you're catching my heart. You're not just. That's why we're teaching you how to go about this and the passion of it. This is why you need to throw yourselves into this and not look at yourself and say, "Well, in 20 years I'll be doing what you're doing." No, you can be doing it tomorrow, and there's no reason why you can't do it tomorrow, and there's no reason why you can't jump into situations and be, you've got more than enough anointing of God and power. Now, in 1 Timothy 4, we're going to finish with this. We didn't really talk much about Thessalonians, but
we did as well at the same time.
It's all about Thessalonians. He said, 1 Timothy 4, when he said, verse 12, don't let anyone look down on your youthfulness until I come to you. Until I come, give attention to the public reading of Scripture, to exhortation, to teaching. Do not neglect the spiritual gift within you, which was bestowed upon you through prophetic utterance with the laying on of hands by the presbytery, by the eldership. Take pains with these things to be absorbed, so your progress may be evident all. Pay close attention to yourself, and to your teaching. Persevere in these things, for as you do this, you will ensure salvation both for yourself and those who hear you. Can you hear Paul saying, Timothy, you've got to take care of yourself spiritually here? When he says take care of yourself, that's not like, well, I'm going to take 6 months off and just go on a retreat and put some cucumbers on my eyes and just get... He's saying, Timothy, you can't be effective unless you're looking after your own spirituality through this.
Yep.
The secret to it is not how much you've learnt, but that you're learning. All right? Do you hear that?
Yeah.
The secret is not how much you've learnt, but that you're learning.
Yeah.
Even when you're separated from me, you're still keeping yourself fresh and open before God. You've still got your disciplines of connecting with God. You're paying attention to yourself, so that out of that is throwing to... the key is not how mature is the word that you're bringing, but that the word is fresh to you.
Yeah.
You are bringing freshness out of you.
It's something that when you were leading one of the life groups that you said to us that you minister out of your overflow.
Yeah.
It's like, and if you're not ministering out of your overflow, it's like a finite sort of amount.
Yeah.
And then if you empty that and then you've got nothing, then you can't.
Yeah.
But if you're keeping that fresh,
Yeah.
if he's not what he's learnt but what he's learning,
Yeah.
he's growing, and he's filled to the brim, and then there's excess and there's overflow, and that takes care of what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said that's mixed in with the sense that we laid hands on you, we prophesied and spoken to you and called forth your gifts. There's something of God in you. You can draw into these things. You can lean into these things. You can... There's an authority that is yours to lean into. There's an ability and a grace that goes beyond your natural. You can look at yourself, I'm just a young man. He said, no, don't look at that. Look at what God has put into you, empowered you. Now keep that fresh. I would look down on Timothy because of this one verse, and in 2 Timothy chapter 1.
My Bible has a typing error.
Oh, yeah.
Well, just because grammatical, it says, "Do not neglect the gift you have, which was given you."
Yeah, no, that's actually correct. You can say which was given you.
Not given to you.
Yeah, you can drop it out.
Really,
Yeah.
I did not know that. Weird. That reads really weird.
Yeah.
We're out now.
Second Timothy.
When was this one written? Much later.
This is
old man Paul.
This is getting towards the end.
62.
And so what I do is I go to Acts 28 because I'd written them all in at the end.
I think you said 62.
Yeah, AD. Now we're looking at 64 to 67. So this is 2 Timothy because this is 2 Timothy, not 1 Timothy.
Okay, so First Timothy was
62 to 64.
Yeah, and
now
then 2 Timothy is 64 to 67.
Yeah, so he's Paul and Peter are martyred at the end, not long after this.
Okay, so this is one of the last things Paul writes.
Yeah, this might be his last letter, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so he says, "I'm longing to see you, even as recall your tears." Verse 4.
Where is this?
Is this
Verse 4.
First, chapter 1. Yeah, as I remember your tears, I long to see you, that I may be filled with joy.
So he's 67 by this stage. How old is Timothy? So we said when Paul was about 50.
Well, I
said
started using
Timothy was about 20.
So
67, he's 37. All right, so he's still pretty young.
Yeah.
And now he's like, I remember the tears. Yeah, this is getting very real for them.
Yeah.
And I remember the faith, the sincere faith. It's beautiful. And he said, and for this reason I remind you, kindle afresh the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. And it was like now it was the presbytery. Now it's like, actually remember Paul, stir that up. Paul's 60. Stir it up because I'm about to go. All right, and you get that at the end because at the end of this letter,
Like the last thing you can say to him, like stir it up.
yeah,
That's good.
he says, for verse 6, don't turn that. I'm already being poured out as a drink offering. The time of my departure has come. I've fought the good fight. I've finished the course. I've kept the faith. In the future, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness. You know, he is taught. He knows he's on the edge of this.
He's looking.
he knows he's at the end.
Yeah, and verse 7 says, "But God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and discipline." I heard a phrase from this, which was timid Timothy. Hey, Timothy, don't be so scared. And it's like, oh, poor old nervous Nelly Timothy. That was sort of, he got relegated as nervous Timothy because
Timid Timmy.
yeah, don't be timid. I think looking back at where he's come from, that I have framed Timothy as a nervous young guy, but in fact, look at what he has done.
Yeah.
By himself. He's been sent to Thessalonians. He's been sent to Corinth. He's been resent to Corinth. He's been made pastor at Ephesus. He's been told to deal with this. Paul's getting the end. He says, "Timothy, stir it up." and don't take a backward step. Don't shrink back one little bit. Don't shrink back, Timothy. Go hard. Go bold. Go to the next level. Go up, Timothy. Don't give in for a moment to the pressure. Go hard. At 37, come on, Timothy. So instead of seeing this as a young guy who's a nervous little kid, I see a young guy who is like been Paul's son and taken it. Not just when he was with Paul, but he was sent out to be Paul's fixing man. So I'm saying this. I'm basically saying I think there's a lot more in you than you realise. I'm talking to the people watching. I'm talking to you guys, and I'm as guilty as anybody as sort of over preparing, overthinking the need to prepare, and so you say, oh, but what happens if I get into that situation? What if I'm dealing with this? Well, just trust the gifting that's on us. Trust the main thing is that everything you're doing, you're keeping it. This is not, I'm going to fill you up, now go out there and empty it out. No, it must be you are keeping this.
Yeah, what is it? I like what you said. It's not how much you've learned, it's that you're learning. It's like, okay. Speaking to the hoarders, speaking to the throwers right now, to the people out there who love to go and do things quickly because they can't be stuffed learning.
Don't worry about
that. I'll figure it out.
This is not.
This is not saying no foundations. This is saying if you're learning your foundations and you're being diligent in that, you can start doing stuff now. You don't have to wait till you're done with the foundations. It's not saying you don't need the foundations. It's saying while you're building these foundations, God wants to use you while you're doing those things, not instead of doing those things, and not after you've done those things.
It doesn't say foundations are irrelevant. It doesn't say
Paul spent 10 years studying the Bible.
Yeah, it's just whatever time. But if you find yourself thrust into that situation, you need to be ready and be bold, like Timothy, to step into it.
Yeah.
But not sort of having that mindset like, not me. You.
Yeah.
Now do it. Go and I still, when I think of Paul he's at Ephesus dealing with things there. He's got just because he writes to one letter doesn't mean he's got no other church issues. Just means that's the one that he got a letter to.
Yeah.
But the issues that were facing him at Corinth, it's like, how would you like to have these issues? What to do about this? What to in regard to this? In regard to this, he's having to get policy. He's having to give direction. What do we do about this? And Corinth is filled with these questions. And he's obviously responding to stuff.
Yeah.
And he's responding in a hostile environment at times. That people,
be kind to Timothy.
Yeah, people are not. They're undermining.
They're voicing their disagreement.
I'll end up teaching. How do you deal with a situation where they're undermining your authority, but you want to speak in a heart of servanthood? Right. So you've got to bring your authority through, but you've got to reinforce servanthood, because that's my heart. My heart is love, servanthood. All right, and you're forcing me to come in heavy-handed and be, I'm an apostle. Yeah. So I'm not going to come in and say, but that's what you need. But if I come through and say I'm an apostle, you might get the impression that's how we all got to be haughty and full of ourselves.
Yeah.
So he said, actually, the answer's in servanthood. The answer's in love, but without me. But I'm an apostle sent of Christ, and this is why I've got the authority to do this. So there's levels of authority, but in servanthood. And just beautiful. Paul having to try and work these things through. So that's my challenge to you two guys. Okay, this is not. When we get through this, we'll be equipped. This is. Oh God, there are situations that are being dealt with. Well, we can do this. Will I get it wrong? Well, did Timothy get it wrong? He just went out and did what God called him to do. Did the best, and just trusted in what God has put in him. Trusted what had been administered to him, the authority that they were sent. You guys have got more. What I'm saying, you guys have got more than enough God in you, word in you, life in you, authority in you. Same as you watching, and like Jay said, this is not speaking against any need for accountability or
Foundations.
or anything like that. Yeah, if you grow your ministry beyond your foundations, you will get into problems. Things will happen that will, you'll dry up.
It's saying don't do that instead of your foundations, and don't wait until after your foundations. Do it while you're building. Let God continue to do things.
You can be developing foundations while you're ministering.
Yes.
Okay, because that's what Timothy.
And because the reality is, you're not supposed to ever stop building your foundations. First Thessalonians, when I was reading it this week, it said, I love how much it talks about. Just trying to find it here. In chapter 4, I think it was. Where it. I'm trying to find exactly. I think here. Finally, then, brothers, we ask and urge you in the Lord Jesus, just as you have received from us how you ought to walk and to please God, foundations, basically. Just as you've received from us your foundations, just as you are doing, that you do it so more and more. It's a ongoing process. Paul, God, they never saw foundations as something you finish. Do it more and more. As you learn to walk with God, you're going to do it more and more. Because the reality is, if you're waiting till your foundations are done, when you get to what you think is the end of your foundations, you'll find there's more to learn. There is more steps to go into. There's more God wants to teach us. So it's like, if you wait till God's done teaching to start ministering, you're never going to minister, because God's never going to be done teaching you. God's never going to be done. John 15, I am the branch. Where does it say here? As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like branches and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burnt. So if it's not in him, where is it? I'm trying to find where it talks about there's you'll be pruned.
Oh, that's 1 and 2.
Verse 1 and 2. I'm the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. It's like talking about that exact same concept of, you're going to continue to grow. You're never supposed to stop learning foundations. In that case, you shouldn't wait till they're done.
Yeah.
So
your job is to not sort of say, I don't think I'm ready.
Yeah.
Stop. This is the thing, and it's like the hoarder and the I'm looking at all these names here, all these people. All right, I'm looking. At Christine, my wife, Brooke. Jay, can you scroll up for me?
Yeah, of course.
Who's been? We've got David Legg.
Christine. We've had Pastor Christine. We've had Brooke. We've had David Legg. We've had Joe. Happy birthday, Joe. Happy birthday, Joe, for today. Lee. We've had Sheba. We had Katie. We had Mark. We had Chris
from Colombia.
We had Richard on. We had Judith on.
Yeah, okay.
And others, obviously, that we don't get to see the names.
Yeah. So I'm just going through all those names, which I do know all those people. Some of them overseas, some here, some down, live, a few hours away. Some live, 15 hours flight away. Some of them are in our own church. Many of them are in church. None of those names I look at and say, you need some more foundations.
No.
Every one of you, and you two guys, I look at you and say, based on what I've read here, we are well equipped to go into big situations and to find what God has called us to, and then say, well, let's go there hard.
Yeah.
Let's do it hard. Let's go
strong.
Let's go strong. And we could. It's not going to be easy. You need to go and read 1 Thessalonians, and then you get to chapter 4. You find out 3 things that Paul addresses. One of them is their sexual immorality. They were a city a city that just had no sexual morals. It was not part of their. They weren't restoring them. There was no morals. But Paul's having to teach them it is not okay to have sex in any situation with anyone. It's this man and wife, and so that's going against the cultural flow. But he says, now you're in Christ. These are some of the things. So Timothy had to go back and hit some things which are like this. You guys. Our world thinks we are dinosaurs. We think that the morality that we express is just ridiculous. That our concepts of what a man and a woman are antiques and no longer relevant, and in fact need to be oppressed. That the thoughts and our views towards certain things of sexuality and purity and all that are not just weird, but they're to be resisted and to be pulled down. You guys, you're equipped to go and stand against that flow and teach and equip people who get saved how to transform.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is not an easy. Just teach them 1, 2, 3 nice things. This is not. You can go and teach Sunday school the basics. This is rough situations, tough cultural challenges. You guys are the ones that I'm going to thrust in there. You're equipped. You could feel, I don't feel very prepared. The same, I actually thought, what would I do with the 1 Corinthians, having to deal with that? Oh, thank God for Paul. Now he's 50, and he's writing these things, or 55 or 56, 57 by the stage. He's writing these things. And it's like, no, it's not his age. It's he just digs into God. He just allows what the Word has showed him, and he says, well, God, you're going to give me answers to this, and you'll give me answers to this. You'll give me answers.
That's good.
Well, every situation you faced, there is an answer you can pull on. Use the principles and the guidance that the Word gives, because that anchors us. Otherwise, we're just all going anywhere. But the Word anchors us as disciples, and then out of that, we actually have answers for people. But what I'm saying is, you do not need more Word. Hear that in context.
You do not need to wait for more words.
Before you are able to go and do what you're called to do. So you do not need, you're watching this and, oh, glad I'm not doing that. Well, what is God calling you to? Just get out there and do it. I could never help mums in that situation because I wouldn't know what to say to them. How can I help young people in facing these? I've got no training in people that are suicidal. I've got no training in people that are anorexic. I've got no training in people that are doing this or doing that. I don't know how to help someone. I'm not even married. How can I help people who are going through marriage problems? I've got I can't help. I've never been a drug addict. How do I help someone who's addicted to heroin? How do I painkillers? How you say, oh, Paul was never an idolater, and neither was Timothy, from my understanding. His gospel, early age from his mother and his grandmother, and yet he helped people that were getting free from idolatry. You don't have to have gone through it to help people get free from it. So I'm telling you that don't be timid like Timothy, but get in there and use what you've called with boldness and confidence. And say, well, don't let them look down on your youthfulness, physical youthfulness or spiritual youthfulness. Don't let them look down on it.
Yeah.
Go hard with what God's given you. Stay in God, keep it fresh, keep learning, keep growing. And as long as you're growing, as long as what you're giving is fresh, you'll be okay.
I like that. Awesome.
All right?
That's been so good this morning.
That's been amazing.
I've really enjoyed that. That's there's a
I
lot
love what. Can you just put that comment up from Christine, my wife? Christine, great comment at the end.
The word will grow with you the more you use what's already there.
Yeah.
That's so good.
The word will grow within you the more you use what's already there. In other words, sometimes we want more word. God says, no.
Start using
what's in there, then it takes shape.
That's good.
And I've got a lot of things I'm excited to study this week. Most of all was in First Timothy, where it says, do not neglect the gift you have, which was given to you by prophecy from the council of elders, not unlocked with you, but given to you, and the concept of what prophecy can do in that. And side of things I've never seen before, so I'm excited to look into that.
Run
It's
with
very
it,
exciting.
guys.
But it's been really fun. If you've enjoyed this, I encourage you, go back on our YouTube channel if you haven't already, www.breakthrough.org.au/academy. You can check out all the other academies we've done in this series on Acts. If you've enjoyed what you've learned here, this whole series has been this sort of teaching. It's been really, really fantastic. We've also got other series. We've got series on who Jesus was. We've got series on covenant. We've got a series on healing. We've got a series on understanding how to read the Bible. We've got a series on Mirror, Mirror, which is a really fun one on the book of James, if you want to go read that. But I encourage you to go do that. Sunday morning, be here in person or online. We've got Pastor Caitlin speaking this week, which is really exciting. She's going to be bringing the next series in our advanced series, the next sermon in our advanced series, I should say. And then, what's this week? Life groups.
The life groups.
Life groups. This Wednesday night, if you're not a part of a life group, get in the life group because it's the best place to dive into these
Disciples love other disciples.
That's what life groups is
That's
for.
working.
So go to that same website. You can find out all about that. On behalf of myself, Pastor Peter, and Josh, it's been so good
Bless
joining
you
you this
guys.
morning. Have a
Bless
great
you
week.
guys.
We'll see you next Friday. Bye for now.